started, there were hundreds of people with signs chanting. It really did start to get rowdy, but now, as you can tell, most of the people cleared the streets, and there is a line of protesters blocking 6th Avenue and Korean Veteran Boulevard, holding signs with their messages. But for the most part, a rather empty street right now. You can see that there are still police protecting their precinct. They are in riot gear, just making sure everything is calm and nothing is going to get too out of hand. But you can see that the protesters are talking to the officers. We listened in on some of their conversations. We wanted to see what they're angry about. They're talking to them about their experiences when it comes to racism, because out ending police brutality, and it is about racial justice, and so a lot of them are choosing to share their experiences with the officer. But this looks a lot different than what it was a few hours ago. Like I said, when this was really at its peak, there were hundreds of people that filled the streets. People were throwing rocks, they were throwing water bottles, and they were stomping on top of police cars. So a complete 180, whereas now everybody's just exchanging conversation. No one's yelling, no one's really chanting anymore, and the only people really holding signs are the protesters up here that are just blocking the roadway. So definitely a different scene. There has been some vandalism. We're right next to Music City Center. People have spray painted some stuff, some bad words on the side of the building. We saw some people spray paint some words on the street, but again, for the most part, pretty calm here. So I'll send it back to you, Emily, so you can see what other reporters are seeing around the city.
Okay, Sina, thank you so much for that update. Roy Johnson joining us. Thank you for stopping in as we continue our coverage. Obviously, something we're going to be following throughout the evening with multiple crews out on the ground as we continue to monitor the developments in downtown. As I mentioned earlier, we were keeping an eye on the Capitol, where we heard that a statue had been knocked down. There we go. That is that statue that has been knocked down. Still waiting to get more information on when that happened or what exactly is going on there. We think people may be headed that direction. We've got Sky 5 and crews keeping an eye on that. And I can tell you, Emily, on my way in, driving past the NES building, about 24 state police cars are staged there, pulled into the parking lot at NES. I'm not sure if they're anticipating needing to use those state troopers in any capacity, but they are there as well. And I also noticed along James Robertson Parkway coming into the station, a lot of small groups of people looked like they were headed home with their signs from the demonstration earlier, the rally. And so it looks like a lot of people have left. But again, we do see these live scenes downtown by the courthouse where there's still a lot of people gathered. And as our reporters on the scene have said, some people are kind of splintering away in other groups as well. And that's what we keep seeing. It just as we think it's kind of dying off a little bit, people might be heading home, it seems to gain more energy and ramp up a little bit more. So again, still seeing hundreds of people out there, so it doesn't appear this event is ending anytime soon. We can head back out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt. Eric, what are you seeing from where you're at?
Well, I was just talking with some people who started the day at the rally, followed the march to the Central Precinct, and then came here, excuse me, to where we are at the Metro Courthouse. And I asked them what the feeling was this afternoon as they followed the march, as they went to the police station, as they came here. And they said it's hard to explain. It's a mix of sadness and anger that's felt among this group that has led to this rally and to this march. And they say it's really hard to put into words what the feeling was as they were at the rally in Legislative Plaza and then marched to the Central Precinct and then came here to where we are now at the Metro Police, or I'm sorry, at the Metro Courthouse, where, as you can see, there is still a very large police presence, still a lot of the protesters here at the Metro Courthouse. And also on the courthouse, a lot of graffiti. We saw some of that earlier. I believe there was some video from Sky 5 that we saw of some of that graffiti and some of the rocks being thrown. But things kind of just at a standstill right now, like it's at a pause as police are maintaining their line and protesters are staying here at the Metro Courthouse as well. And so we'll continue to monitor this situation, but for now we'll send it back to the studio.
You again just seeing a little bit of that standoff scene we've been seeing throughout the city as officers line up and protesters kind of stand on the other side of the street. So we'll continue to see how long they're there. Let's head back out to News Channel 5's Sina Saleem. Sina, any changes where you're at?
Emily, this situation is so fluid. As you can tell, we were talking to you just a few minutes ago where it was calm, and now you can hear protesters chanting. I mentioned before that about a dozen people were here at Central Precinct having a conversation with police officers. It was nice and calm. And now, as you can tell, completely change of scenery. Dozens of people came back marching down Korean Veterans Boulevard, and now they're yelling at officers. I don't know if you can hear what they're saying, but they are chanting "No justice, no peace." And like I said, very fluid situation. It's very crowded, very packed right now, completely different than what we were seeing just before. People are blocking the street, as you can see, protesters now getting a little bit more hostile towards cars trying to drive through. This whole area of Korean Veterans Boulevard is supposed to be open to cars, but as you can see, protesters have made a wall and they're blocking cars from driving through. They're confronting them with their signs. A lot of anger going on right now. They're holding signs that say "R.I.P. George Floyd." And this man over here has a sign that says "I will breathe." That's what this rally is about. This is called the "I will breathe" revolutionary rally. All this stemming from social injustice that they're seeing and wanting to correct that after George Floyd in Minnesota was killed. And so, as you can see, protesters here chanting "No justice, no peace," gathering here in front of the police. Police have been out here for a few hours now in their riot gear, protecting the precinct. And now things are getting louder. I'll let you take a listen for just a bit.
Okay, Sina, thank you. One more update we want to pass along, just seen from the WeGo public transit system. They have temporarily suspended service and shut down WeGo Central. This is to protect the safety of riders and drivers. They said on Twitter they apologize for any inconvenience and will let you know when regular operations will resume. Obviously, that's in response to the activity going on in downtown right now.
And we should note, so far, other than some vandalism and some vulgarity spray painted on some buildings, and some items thrown, it has been relatively calm and peaceful, a protest. But obviously, as the time goes on and the sun sets, I think that's what police are concerned about, right?
Absolutely. And obviously, as we saw from those crowds, emotions still running high.
Yeah.
So it doesn't appear that they're headed home anytime soon. Let's head back out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt. Eric, what are you seeing now?
Or Chris Davis.
Oh, we can go to Chris Davis.
Chris, you're at the Capitol, correct?
I am. We're actually here at the Edward Carmack statue that has been toppled off of its pedestal. In fact, you can see some damage to the statue itself. The arm is dented. There's a huge gash in the head of the statue. Edward Carmack was actually a senator from the state of Tennessee in the early 1900s. He was actually shot to death at age 50. And this statue was actually erected in 1924. You can see there's been some graffiti written on the base of this. And what kind of was a marvel for photojournalist Brian Hout and I when I walked up there, it doesn't look like it was made. Well, there are some bolts, it looks like, in the base of this, but we're just, mystified how it must have taken a bunch of people to be able to knock this off of its base here at the Capitol. I also just want to direct your attention to the line of state patrolmen that are here at the very top of the Capitol. They're obviously keeping a close eye on things. There isn't really much of a crowd here in the Capitol regardless. There are a few people here that are kind of centered around the base, but there isn't a large crowd like we've seen in some other spots. But this is definitely probably one of the biggest examples of vandalism that we have seen here in downtown Nashville, with the toppling of this statue and the graffiti at the base. Just a really dramatic example. But once again, like you said, Rory, not seeing any examples necessarily of violence, just a lot of property damage that will have to be dealt with as time moves forward.
Chris Davis, live at the Capitol. And we have 3 crews spread out, and you've been watching this throughout the afternoon. Obviously, I just got here, but you've noticed the crowd has really moved around, right?
It's definitely moved around. You know, again, this all kind of started at Legislative Plaza. It was very centralized,
Right.
and then they kind of, as they started marching, dispersed, and then as those groups broke off, they broke off again, and then that's when things started to escalate. So we've kind of been positioning our crews in those different areas as we try to cover a large portion of downtown, really, at this point, that they've been able to cover. So now we can head back out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt. Eric, what are you seeing from where you're at?
Yeah, and Emily, this is one of those more recent areas that protesters have moved to outside the Metro Courthouse. I want to give you a look. Things still kind of at a pause, like we mentioned when you last came to us. There hasn't been a lot of police movement, hasn't been a lot of protester movement. If anything, we've seen the crowd start to thin out a little here in terms of the size, but really not a lot of movement. Police cars have stayed in the middle of the street surrounded by these Metro police officers, some of them using their bikes as a barrier. But over the last 30 minutes, we've seen some members of this protester crowd leave. It's certainly dwindled a little bit inside, but still a pretty significant group here outside of the Metro Courthouse. Again, many of these protesters came from the Central Precinct over on the other side of downtown, marching through here. And as I mentioned earlier, we kind of followed their path as they marched from the police precinct here to the Metro Courthouse. And all along the way, you could see there was graffiti along that path, and much of that graffiti talking about George Floyd, the man in Minneapolis who was killed by Minneapolis police. There was a lot of R.I.P. George Floyd painted on buildings all along First Avenue near Broadway as we made our way here. And like I said just a few minutes ago, I talked with a member of this protest. They said it's hard to describe the feeling, and I would agree with that. It's hard to describe the feeling here because it's a mixture of anger and sadness that's really been hovering over this protest all day. And for more, I mentioned this group came from the Central Precinct. We have News Channel 5's Sina Saleem is still at the Central Precinct where there are still protesters there as well. We're going to go ahead and send it over to her now.
Eric, yeah, many people came from Metro Courthouse back to Central Precinct. You know, what a difference 20 minutes make, because when I spoke with you guys 20 minutes ago, it was completely calm. The streets actually emptied out, but as you can see, a large group came back from Metro Courthouse to start chanting here in front of Central Precinct again. We have a line of police officers in riot gear blocking the precinct, making sure that it's protected, but then we have protesters now getting in their face, yelling at them. And I don't know if you can hear, but most of them are chanting, "No justice, no peace." And you can tell, I mean, emotions are running high right now. People are angry, and they want their message to be heard. A lot of this is because they want social justice. This is happening. There are riots and protests throughout the country because of the George Floyd incident. So many people have hashtag justice for George signs. We saw people spray painting that on the ground. A few of the buildings here in this area have been vandalized. People are spray painting them. And also protesters are blocking this area of Korean Veterans Boulevard. So anybody at home watching this, trying to get around tonight, you should make sure to avoid area, as protesters have been blocking it off, and any cars coming in this direction, the protesters are going to confront you. It got a little hostile for a bit over there, but it seems like right now nothing is getting physical, which is good. Just a lot of chanting, a lot of yelling. You know, when we were here about 2 hours ago, people were throwing items at officers. People were throwing rocks. They were throwing water bottles, throwing signs at them. So believe it or not, this is actually calmer than what it was a couple hours ago. So again, a lot of these protesters left, and then they came back from Metro Courthouse. It seems like those are the two main points right now of where people are protesting here at Central Precinct and Metro Courthouse. People again chanting, "No justice, no peace." And they're just kind of getting in the officers' faces right now. So we will continue to monitor this situation. But for now, Emily and Rory, I'm going to send it back to you in the studio.
Okay, Sina, thank you. Sky 5, we have up again, giving us another perspective here. That's the crowd outside the Metro Courthouse that we've also been monitoring throughout the evening, again, after that building was vandalized a couple of hours ago. Let's head over to News Channel 5's Chris Davis, who is at the Capitol. Chris.
Well, Emily, I just want to give a little perspective on this. About 4 hours ago, photojournalist Brian Hallett and I were standing at this very spot and just looked over a sea of demonstrators here that were listening to the speeches given at Legislative Plaza. I mean, thousands. This whole entire area was packed in, and it really, people were respectfully listening, and they were chanting, the different chants that were led up at the podium just at the top of the stairs right here. What a difference 4 hours makes. From here, the demonstrators walked down the stairs, went down and over towards Broadway, and then over towards Central Precinct, which adds the bird flies is over in this direction. And now, as we're seeing it really demonstrators spreading throughout the city. We showed this a moment ago, but I think it bears repeating and bears showing again, because this is a very dramatic example of how things have changed. This is a statue of Edward Burke, who is a senator for Tennessee in the early 1900s. He was actually shot and killed at the age of 50, and a statue to him was dedicated in the 1920s. But you can see the damage to the statue itself. Even once they were able to get him back on his perch, there's a pretty deep gash right here in his head, of the statue of the head, obviously, and quite a lot of damage. It would probably take some work to be able to get this back on its pedestal, and there's also been some graffiti done to the very base of the statue itself. We also showed this to you the last time we were around, but I think it just goes to show the precautions that are in place for some of these Tennessee landmarks. You see a lot of Tennessee Highway Patrol members that are standing guard over the Capitol with at various levels there on the state Capitol, prepared in case any action and activity moves in this direction. But for the most part, other than just some people coming by and taking pictures of the statue toppled, along with other things, it just seems like if we kind of look over in this direction down Charlotte, you can just kind of see that people are kind of walking in various directions. There's not a whole lot of uniformed activity of the group moving necessarily, at least in this part of town. It seems like a lot of the activity is concentrated in the two other areas where Eric and Sina are able to show you.
Okay, Chris, thank you so much for that update. We also want to take another shot from Sky 5, which is pretty much directly above where Chris Davis is standing, because you can see that statue that he was referencing that was knocked down and damaged.
The south side of the state capitol there, heading down below, would be near TPAC and Legislative Plaza. So you see a few people gathered there.
Not a large crowd in that area, though, as Chris mentioned. It seems like the larger numbers are in other parts of the city, but again, certainly some damage there with that statue being knocked down.
All right, we're going to go back to News Channel 5's Sina Sleem, I believe, who is at the Central Precinct near Music City Center downtown, where another group of people have gathered. Or we're going to go to Eric Hilt, I should say. Eric, what are you seeing there at the courthouse? I will say, Eric, from Sky 5 above, it does not look like an extremely large crowd.
Yeah, that crowd has thinned out tremendously in the last half hour, 45 minutes since we've arrived here. Another thing that has changed is when we arrived, protesters were right in the face of police officers who were holding that line, making that barrier in between them and their cars. And if you look across on the far side of the police cars, you can see many of those protesters have moved back. As you can see, actually, crowds of protesters moving on from the Metro Courthouse and either going home or moving to another place, but it looks like they're leaving this area. But going back to when we arrived, there were people just inches from that police barricade where you can see some of those bicycles. As you can see, that has cleared out now as the crowd has thinned out. Obviously, you could tell that as well from the air. From here on the ground, we were able to get that vantage point as well as people are starting to leave this area. Now, we don't know if these people are going home, if they're moving someplace else. I know we just heard from Sina that there was an influx of people at the Central Precinct. But as we know, right here at the Metro Courthouse, the crowd has been thinning over the last half hour as the sun sets and now the lights coming on here at the plaza outside of the courthouse. We're going to continue to keep an eye on this situation, but again, crowds starting to disperse, but police still have a large presence here outside the Metro Courthouse. Back to you.
Eric, thank you for that update. And we also saw some video there of what the scene looked like earlier this evening. You could see the numbers there. So again, just lots of people making their way through downtown. This is another look at the Metro Courthouse where we've discussed some of the vandalism there on the building, the spray painting. Looks like a fair amount of people still gathered in that area. We thought they might have been moving to another location, but now they may be headed back that direction.
And it's surprising, Emily, that right there at the building you do not see any police presence whatsoever. They're just kind of staying back. Obviously some vulgarities. We apologize to our viewers for that, but you can see the damage there, that mostly spray paint from what we can tell. This is from earlier, or is this live, guys? No, this is earlier where we can see it. Yeah, we've seen this again.
Yeah, that's when they just arrived. You can see them spray painting the building, throwing things at the windows, breaking some of those windows. And that was what, right after they arrived initially, police did arrive. That's when that line of officers showed up on bicycles and were able to kind of get that scene under control. They had kind of the standoff situation where they were lined up and protesters were kind of engaging with them. But it looked as if that area was kind of under control. Now it appears people may be headed back that direction, as we saw that live shot just a second ago, as police continue to keep an eye on that, as well as obviously other areas in the city where we're continuing to track groups of protesters.
The big concern here, obviously nationwide, as we track CBS News and our affiliates across the country, another night, police across the country, Emily, bracing for protests. Minneapolis, of course, where George Floyd was killed. Miami, Cleveland, Los Angeles, Houston, Dallas, New York, and many more we're monitoring right now. So obviously the concern is we don't want to see some of the violence and the rioting erupt here in Nashville. And the police department has, I should say, a pretty good relationship with community leaders, civic leaders, church leaders. I know there's a lot of communication. And it looks like so far things have remained relatively calm, but we have our crews on the ground watching very closely. Obviously, you know, we've got a city coming out of a tornado, the damage in some economically disadvantaged areas, moving into a pandemic, and now the death of George Floyd has triggered a lot of anger and frustration, obvious anger and frustration.
It's fair to say it's been an emotional year.
Yeah.
There's certainly a lot to process for everyone all across the city as well as the country, and some of that may be they may be channeling some of that into the activity that we've seen here in Nashville as well as throughout the country. Let's head back out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt. Eric, what's the latest where you're at?
You can really see now how much this crowd has thinned, especially as compared to earlier. You can see a lot of people getting up and moving. Actually, it looks like there's a large group moving as a group, moving across to the other side of the Metro Courthouse. So it looks as if things are moving on from here. As you can see, a lot of these protesters getting up and walking across the park here. We don't know where they're going. We're unsure where they're headed, but they are leaving, for the most part, the Metro Courthouse right now. They've been here for some time, again, coming from the Central Metro Nashville Police Precinct on the other side of downtown, starting just a few blocks from here at Legislative Plaza this afternoon. And then they came here to the Metro Courthouse. Now we're unsure where they're headed, but as you can see, especially over to the right there, people kind of clearing out of the Metro Courthouse. They're heading, it looks like they might be heading actually back into the park as we see from our vantage point, maybe going back, and it sounds like they might be throwing things at the Metro Courthouse again, as we saw earlier, because it looks like there are people congregating near that entrance to the Metro Courthouse, kind of moving further away from police and moving back into the park. We'll get a good look at kind of what's going on and report back to you. But right now, people moving away from the police here at the Metro Courthouse, moving back into the park as a pretty big group. So we'll try and figure out what's going on there, and we'll report back to you. So for now, we'll send it back.
Eric, can you still hear us right now?
Yes.
All right, just want to ask you a question, because there's been a lot of talk, especially up in Minneapolis, about outside agitators or activists from out of town coming into some of these protests. The likelihood of that happening here in Nashville, from what we know, is low, and now we see they're trying to set fire now to that window. Do you notice anyone, a lot of times these outside agitators or activists are dressed in all black. They have very professional gear, backpacks, maybe even walkie-talkies, communication. Have you seen anyone kind of stands out among the crowd like that?
I have not seen that personally. I have to admit it has been a large crowd. So there were a lot of people, especially earlier at the rally and during the marches and at the precinct. So it's hard to pick out any individual person, but I have not seen that. And I think you mentioned it earlier. It is important to note that we've seen a lot of vandalism, some obscene spray paint that kind of pales in comparison to some of the things that we've seen in other cities across the country, like Minneapolis. But no, to answer your question, I haven't seen anyone really matching that description.
Okay. And our police, can they see our vantage point from Sky 5? It looks like they're trying to ignite a fire at one of the windows there, the courthouse behind you, and police aren't doing anything right now?
Police are holding their line. I want to, you're getting a look from above. They are pretty much exactly where they were when you had our shot down here on the ground. They're holding that line behind. The bicycles remaining by the police cars here on 3rd Avenue. They haven't moved toward the park. And I think you or Emily touched on it earlier. They weren't moving toward the Metro Courthouse. They weren't getting in front of the Metro Courthouse. They've kind of set up camp here on 3rd Avenue North. And that's where they stayed even as the protesters moved and went to the park. They've remained here on the avenue.
Okay, Eric, thank you. We are looking at a live picture right now of the Metro Courthouse where it appears some of the protesters are starting to light the building on fire.
And that's a big blaze in one of those windows now.
Yeah, we're seeing smoke coming out of the building right there.
Our chief photographer, Mike Rose, is in Sky 5 right now. Mike, tell us what you see.
Yeah, guys, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, unbelievable. We just got back up in the air after refueling and noticed that the protesters had kind of thinned out from their little standoff over there off of Jedrick and made their way over back to the front of the courthouse. We were seeing people throwing bottles and just metal chairs or whatever they can get their hands on. And then somebody lit, it looked like a flag or something, and they shoved it in this window, and then other protesters came up, started throwing other incinerating devices in there, smoke bombs, cardboard, like protest signs, anything that would kind of catch fire. So, this is unbelievable. The Metro Courthouse, the City Hall is on fire now. There is these are all administrative office buildings that kind of face public square right here, and they just kind of continue to trash the historic Metro Courthouse. This is unbelievable that this is going on, but you can see the flames inside. I mean, if this is an office building, there's probably plenty of flammable material in there, paperwork, office supplies, or whatnot. So if this doesn't get addressed soon, it's going to get worse. We got another window that is being attempted to be lit over here to the side on the right. And again, if you're the fire department or the police, I don't know how you kind of attack this thing, whether you can get at it from the inside or what. Now, the window over there to the left, it looks like the flames have gone out. The protesters are stepping back. Perhaps somebody is inside there with a fire extinguisher or something and is letting it out.
We have to interrupt you so we can go to Eric Hilt down on the scene. You see this crowd dispersing, running away. Eric, what do you know?
Yeah, we're unsure what just happened. We were setting up to give you a look at this fire from on the ground here in the park, and all of a sudden people started running away from the Metro Courthouse. We joined that crowd to be safe, but unsure what they were running for. But from here you can see that fire raging inside the Metro Courthouse, and every once in a while you hear glass shattering. You know, it's about once a minute you can hear another window break as it seems like they're making their way down the Metro Courthouse, these protesters. But yeah, from this angle you can really see the fire that's going on inside that first floor of the Metro Courthouse. Still unsure what caused everyone to run just about a couple minutes ago, but as you can see, those protesters making their way back to the Metro Courthouse, closer to those broken windows and to that fire that's going on inside of City Hall. So pretty unique sight here, as there's a fire inside of City Hall, inside the Metro Courthouse, and those throngs of people. I want to give you a look. You had asked earlier what police were doing. I want to, if you can see through this way, you can see police are back where they were, where we showed you earlier. They really haven't moved up onto the plaza, up onto the park or to City Hall. They are maintaining that line with that barrier with their bicycles on 3rd Avenue. They haven't moved really at all towards the courthouse or toward the park. They are maintaining their status on 3rd Avenue North. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes as the protesters continue to flock toward the Metro Courthouse and this block. But we'll go ahead and send it to you as we try to learn a little bit more about what's going on.
Okay, Eric, thank you. Obviously, things escalating here. That's certainly the worst of the damage and activity that we've seen throughout the afternoon and evening.
This is obviously the last thing that you want to see happen is fire started. I will say that is a kind of an industrial design building, a lot of concrete, a lot of steel, and hopefully there's nothing there that will ignite quickly. It looks like those fires have gone out from this vantage point. But people are right there on the windows once again, and a group is there, and I think they are intent to try to ignite a fire again. And I'm surprised that police are holding back, and I'm not sure if the fire department has been called or is on alert in case a fire does start and spreads quickly, Emily.
That's what I was just about to say. I'm wondering, waiting on police and fire to arrive there on the scene. Now it looks
they've
like...
actually gone inside.
Yeah, it looks like flames are out now that we were seeing
Well, they've
earlier.
opened the window, and I just saw someone come out of the window.
And you can see all of the graffiti on the building as well. That was done, some of the profanities there we apologize for. That was done a couple of hours ago when protesters initially made their way to the building, and they spray painted it, broke some of the windows, and then appeared to walk away. So we thought that area was kind of breaking up, and then there was a resurgence. People returned to that area, and that's when some of those fires started.
And hopefully, you know, now that they have access inside the courthouse, hopefully, you know, they don't do too much damage. But it appears they do have access now. They've opened one of the windows or one of the doorways there, and a couple of people we just saw go in and come back out. Eric Hilt is watching this from street level. Eric, police still holding their line.
Yeah, police still holding their line. I just wanted to make sure you saw, though, if we can go back to the Metro Courthouse, I believe you mentioned it, Rory, that the fire seems to be out, but it seems as though people are getting inside of the Metro Courthouse now, trying to get inside. It looks like our photojournalist Dan Blommel is telling us it looks like there is now another fire, and you can see that there. Inside the Metro Courthouse. Really just a totally different scene from what we saw about 30 minutes ago. I was telling you that it seemed calm, that things were dying down, things were dissipating, people were leaving, and then just like a finger snap, things started happening again. The protesters moved to the Metro Courthouse, and as you can see, a pretty sizable flame now inside of the Metro Courthouse as folks have been trying to get inside as well. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys were able to see this vantage point one more time as things are really starting to progress. You can see another window break next to the fire. Things starting to escalate here at the Metro Courthouse as it gets later and the lights come on and the sun goes down. So it'll be interesting to see how police react to this and where this goes from here. Back to you guys.
Eric, thank you. We can see very clearly there flames inside the building seem to be growing, getting larger there. As you can see, a wide shot there from Sky 5 with the crowd outside the building continues to grow. And then you can see the flashing lights there. Can't tell if that's police or fire along the street there. Also keeping an eye on the situation, but wow, things certainly escalated quickly there. And
the sad thing is that the message will get lost now because of the damage and the cost of repairs to this building, this historic Metro Courthouse. It's going to cost all of us, all the taxpayers. So hopefully this will not escalate much further, and hopefully those flames won't spread inside the courthouse.
And one thing we should mention, when we talked about the I Will Breathe rally that really was the start of all of this, when we had talked to some of the organizers of that event yesterday about it, they really stressed they wanted this to be peaceful. They wanted people to come out and express their views, and that the event was set for 3 to 5 o'clock. And they made it pretty clear that that was their event, and they weren't going to be involved or responsible in what happened after the fact. So we can't really be clear who all is involved at this point, as we've watched this evolve throughout the evening as the crowd has grown and people have covered all different kinds of areas of the city. I guess we shouldn't necessarily say that it's all connected to that first event, because we've seen things change so much as this has continued to develop throughout the evening.
Again, if you are just joining us, protesters have broken into and set a fire inside the historic Metro Courthouse on the Green downtown. A lot of them now moving away from the building, but you can see the flames, and now the fire. You can hear the fire department arriving at the scene, and those protesters are moving away from the window.
I think we have, let's head back out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt on the ground there, just not far away from where we can see those flames inside the courthouse. Eric, what are you seeing from where you're at?
Yeah, we can see the flames on either side of the doors of the Metro Courthouse, as there are still a lot of protesters up near the Metro Courthouse, near those doors, near the broken windows and the flames inside. But also, just within the last 15 minutes, you can see over back where police were, a fire truck has arrived, at least one, in the street to presumably respond. It looks like folks are running away from the Metro Courthouse again. If we can get a look, we're unsure why they're running, but this is like what we saw about 10 minutes ago. Folks running away from the courthouse as those fires are going on inside. So unsure what's happening up there. It looks like there's someone set off a firework outside the Metro Courthouse. There is a firework outside. It looks like someone threw another. It looks like they lobbed another some sort of firework. It looks like there's smoke bombs. I don't know if that's. I'm unsure what that is. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions, but you can see it looks like there's another fire now outside of the Metro Courthouse, sort of near the base of the stairs, but certainly a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion there in just the last minute as you saw those folks running away. And then it looks like there are some now police officers up near the door and near the Metro Courthouse. If you can see through this smoke, see through this fog, you can see there are some of the, I believe, Metro police officers making their way. So as we've shown you, they've kind of held back and been on 3rd Avenue where they have been set up for the last hour or so. It looks as though they have now moved along the Metro Courthouse, and this crowd now dispersing away from the building. They're hanging around the park right now, but certainly moved away from the building after that firework, and now police moving in to secure that building, it looks like. So a lot of action, a lot of things changing here outside of the Metro Courthouse.
Eric, and this tweet just now from Mayor John Cooper: this afternoon's rally for George Floyd and racial justice was peaceful. I attended and listened. We cannot let today's message of reform descend into further violence. If you mean our city harm, go home. Again, just within the last minute from Mayor John Cooper. Looks like that scene is now under control, thankfully, at the Metro Nashville Courthouse. Fireworks going off, but SWAT armed police there cleared the area so fire crews can get in.
Fireworks going off, fires inside the building, seeing people come in and out of the building after windows had been busted. Certainly a tense situation there, but you can see the crowd has backed off of the building, and it appears they're trying to get that situation under control. Let's head out to News Channel 5's Chris Davis. Chris, where are you now? What are you seeing?
So we are over here on this side of the courthouse, and I got to tell you, it is just a pungent smell of smoke, and it's actually making my eyes water a little bit. You can see that the crowd is starting to move a little bit further away from the courthouse. But while we're over in this corner, I just want to show you a couple things. Brian, if we can swing around for just a second, you can see some more acts of vandalism here in the public park area of the City Hall, kind of live on the green area. And you may just be able to see right around the corner there in this kind of drive up to the courthouse, you can see SWAT has arrived on this side of the building and is trying to do what they can for crowd control. We're starting to see some fireworks being shot off. Brian, if we go in this direction, we've got some fireworks that are being shot off, sparkler type things, kind of those fireworks that smoke up a little bit. It may actually be, do we think that's tear gas?
Okay.
Anyway,
it may be.
You can
to
definitely,
disperse the crowd.
you can definitely, it is definitely pungent. I'm going to go ahead and put my mask on to be able to help filter through some of that. There's also an open flame actually right in the middle of the green area there. Brian, if we can paint over to that. I don't know when that is the first time I have noticed that. But it does look like there's some crowd control measures that are starting to come into place here to be able to spread the crowd out so that they can do the job that they need to be able to do. We've got another one that shot pretty close to us right there.
Yeah.
Chris, please keep
scene
your
here at the
distance.
courthouse,
Please stay
no
safe.
doubt about it.
Yeah, and please make sure you're staying safe out there and stay away from,
That
scary
definitely
situation
looks
there.
like the SWAT members have fired some tear gas canisters out just to disperse the crowd. You see some protesters there. And some of these protesters, look pretty well prepared with their backpacks, masks, wearing all black. Again, we don't know if they are, Nashvillians or if they have come in from out of town, but they're trying to kick those canisters back, burning the flag. But again, that does look like tear gas, and they've done an effective job of clearing the crowd, Emily.
We also have News Channel 5's Eric Hilt out at the Metro Courthouse. He's also been keeping tabs on the escalating violence there. Eric, I'm sorry, where are you relative to Chris? What are you seeing?
We are on the opposite side of the park near 3rd Avenue, and we saw some folks just run up near us pouring water in their eyes, saying that they were in there and that it was tear gas, and trying to move on, and they quickly moved out of this area. As you can see, a lot of folks have dispersed, a lot of people getting away from the building, and even more leaving from the park as these measures continue. But we saw a group of 3 women who came up right near us, were putting water in their eyes, saying that it burned, saying it was tear gas. As now you can see in the middle of the park, it looks like some of the protesters burning a flag here right outside the Metro Courthouse. So a lot of activity in the last 10 or 15 minutes as things ramped up in terms of people moving from the street back to the Metro Courthouse. Just to recap, then they broke some of the windows. The protesters then lit some fires inside the courthouse, and after several minutes of that, police moving in, and it appears deploying some of these crowd disbursement measures to get people away. And Rory, as you said, it is working, the crowd thinning here at the Metro Courthouse, and people seem to be moving on, or at least leaving here for the moment.
Eric Hilt and Chris Davis on opposite sides of the area, and there was just so much that police could take, and they decided to move in and put that fire out. Chris Davis, your camera angle, what are you seeing now?
So we actually had to relocate because SWAT members actually were shooting some tear gas in our direct location, so they can do what you're seeing right now. You're seeing, one of their, I think that's the SWAT Humvee that is pulling up actually on to the lawn here at City Hall. I think that they're also making way for law enforcement and fire officials. We're hearing just a flurry of sirens coming from, excuse me. Ooh, sorry that, we probably need to back up a little bit, Brian. This tear gas is getting hard to breathe. I'm going to send it back to you guys so we can relocate.
No problem, Chris. Please, keep your distance. Make sure you're staying safe. In a constantly changing situation. Look, just what we've seen in the last few minutes, how that has escalated quickly.
As we've seen in these protests around the country, tear gas is very effective, and just even a small amount. Chris was trying to get his breath there, so hopefully he can get into some clear air and get some water. But you see now police on their bicycles moving up, establishing a line in front of the courthouse. We know that there's the SWAT Humvee right in the middle of the grass, and the fire department showed up because they did not want that fire to spread throughout that building, because that could have gone gone wrong really quickly and gone up in flames really quickly.
Very quickly. And there's our view from Sky 5 as we see kind of a wider shot of the entire Metro Courthouse, as well as some of the police cars there along the street monitoring the situation. Wow, that really escalated quickly as we saw people return to that area. Again, it's just kind of the latest stop as they worked their way through downtown. All of a sudden, people started starting fires inside the building. Someone got in the building, and then fireworks, and it kind of took off from there. Let's head back out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt, who isn't far from there. Eric, what's the latest as far as the crowds out there?
Yeah, as the crowds have moved back as that SWAT vehicle moved in, but I want to give you a look at the Metro Courthouse. You can see that police officers have made that barricade of bicycles that we saw on 3rd Avenue. That has now moved up to the steps of the Metro Courthouse. There are also firefighters that are going window to window. You can see them along the Metro Courthouse, looking in, trying to peer in, trying to, I'm guessing, look for any active flames that are inside of the Metro Courthouse, because as we saw, there were several fires that were lit inside of the Metro Courthouse. But you were asking what happened to the crowd. It looks like they're coming together again as another tear gas canister was exploded. Someone just tried to kick it back to SWAT, it looks like. And now folks are throwing, it looks like, a water bottle at the SWAT crew who have worked their way out to the center of the park. Just before we panned over, there was a large group there chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot." And it looks like there's another tear gas canister going out toward that crowd. It looks like police are getting, as someone's looked like trying to pick it up and couldn't, as that tear gas now flowing here outside the Metro Courthouse. Now, I talked with one woman here. It was really right before the tear gas canisters started being deployed. I was talking to a protester here who said she thought this was important but didn't want that message to get lost. She thought what was happening here tonight was important, but wanted to make sure that message wasn't getting lost, and you certainly hope that doesn't happen as there's more tear gas being deployed and the wind is changing. So we're going to send it back because the wind is changing, and that's bringing that tear gas over toward us. So we'll send it back to the studio.
Thanks, Eric. And now the question is, and as we've seen, Emily, it only takes a few people who decide to cross the line and get violent. So police have moved in. And again, we see a few of those people, and it will be interesting to find out, a few of those people wearing all black with backpacks and black masks, where they're from, are they local, what groups are they involved with, seem to be right in the middle of it. Now the question is, where will this group go if they're going to shift to somewhere else? And look at the show of Metro Police. I believe that's on the interstate.
Because we don't know where they're headed next.
Yeah.
And as we've watched them throughout the evening, they've really moved all over the city. There hasn't really been a definite pattern to where they've been. And now that they're maybe getting away from the courthouse because of the danger there, we'll have to keep an eye from Sky 5 there to see where they're headed. You mentioned a few moments ago the tweet from Mayor John Cooper. Still have not seen anything updated from him. This was 9 minutes ago when he said the afternoon's rally for George Floyd and racial justice was peaceful. I attended and listened. We cannot let today's message of reform descend into further violence. And that was 9 minutes ago, about the time that the violence really started escalating there at the Metro Courthouse. So we're keeping an eye on there on Twitter here to see if he has any additional comments. Obviously, he's monitoring the situation.
And
scary sight out there.
That shot of all of those Metro Police cars kind of staged, it looked like perhaps the Woodland Street Bridge right near the courthouse there over the Cumberland River, just parked and staged, ready to deploy if needed. Chris Davis, hopefully you got some clear air to breathe. Tell us where you are and what you're seeing.
So I believe you're seeing our shot right now from the right side of the courthouse. What I can tell you is they have successfully been able to move everyone off of the green portion of City Hall, where a lot of the Live on the Green concerts are held every summer. What a contrast this site is now. We've been able to see from our vantage point some firefighters actually being able to crawl into that window and actually get into the building to be able to render the aid that they need to be able to control the fire inside the building. You can see many different Metro police officers that are on bikes that are standing guard in front of the doors. But to the left side of the building, we're starting to see some of the crowds return. So I don't know if you can hear them talking. They just said they're ordering everyone to stay away from the courthouse. This is the Metro Police. You are ordered to stay away from the courthouse. That is over the loudspeaker from the SWAT car that is parked in the main grass area. They're doing the announcement one more time. And they're starting to do more tear gas to be able to really send that point home that they want more space to be able to work and control this fire and control these crowds, because this has taken such a turn. You can see still within the Metro Courthouse building that the fire alarm lights are still flashing, and they are continuing to set off those canisters. We hopefully are far enough away to where we won't be as directly impacted, but I can tell you, Rory, from that first blast that we got, really unfortunately too close to, because we just didn't realize where everybody was situated. My eyes are still watering, and I've still got a little bit of a catch in my throat. So it is certainly effective and certainly sends the message that they need this area clear. We are seeing most people comply with that order. There are a few people I can see across the green that are still standing probably a little bit too close in where they want to, but the vast majority have pushed out to kind of the concrete apron that surrounds the green of the City Hall, the green field there. So they continue to make the announcement over that loudspeaker from the SWAT vehicle that they want people away from this courthouse. And we certainly hope that those people oblige with that order, because steadily throughout the night, this situation has ratcheted up, and this has definitely taken a whole new level since, a fire began here in the lower levels of the courthouse. Rory and Emily.
Chris, thank you. And we're also hearing from our crews on the ground that the area around the Central Precinct has really slowed down. People have moved away from that area. That was another spot we were kind of keeping an eye on earlier in the evening. So it appears all the activity now is really centered around the Metro Courthouse, as Chris was just describing for us. So we're kind of moving crews around to get a better vantage point of everything that's going on there. We do have News Channel 5's Eric Hilt there as well. Eric, what are you seeing?
Now we're seeing the same thing Chris said. A lot of people dispersing as the SWAT car, that truck is making that announcement, telling people to get away from the Metro Courthouse, to go someplace else. And looks like a lot of people are heeding that, at least moving away from the building itself and moving out to kind of the edges where we have been. I also talked to some folks who were closer to the crowds, inside those crowds as that tear gas was deployed. One person said it stung like something he'd never felt before. Another person just asked me, why are they shooting at us? Why are they shooting this tear gas at us as we're trying to speak our piece? But as you can see, police have now lined that front steps, as we saw in the last 15 minutes, now bringing in that SWAT vehicle, and they continue to make this announcement over and over again, telling people to leave the Metro Courthouse and to get away from this park area. The wind has changed again on us, as it looks like some other cars are putting their sirens up. So we're going to go ahead and send it back, because the wind has changed and given us a little bit more of that tear gas. So we'll send it back to you as we find a better vantage point to give you a view of this.
Okay, Eric, thank you. And Metro Police are confirming that they deployed gas at the historic courthouse to protect the building after protesters were there setting it on fire, as we first showed you on Sky 5. The Nashville Fire Department, they are being escorted into the building by officers. So police and fire on the scene now, keeping an eye on the situation.
And again, within the past hour, protesters there at the courthouse made their way into the courthouse after earlier protesters had spray painted and vandalized the courthouse, and then several small fires were set. And that is when police moved in and said enough is enough. The SWAT team moved in, the fire department was called, and the tear gas was dispersed, and the crowd dispersed pretty quickly. The question now is, as we mentioned, Emily, as we see from Sky 5, are these people just going to kind of break up and go home peacefully, or are they going to organize and move somewhere else? And obviously with social media, it's very easy to organize and communicate with one another. So right now they are just gathered there, looks like on the south side, near where it wraps around to the Woodland Street Bridge. Protesters are gathered there, and who knows where they're going to go next.
And as we first showed you on Sky 5, we had the shot of the Metro Courthouse. It was probably 8:15, a little after 8, when we first started seeing those fires being set inside the building. So we're looking at at least half an hour where the activity has really been centered around the Metro Courthouse as protesters have kind of moved away from the other areas that we've been tracking throughout the evening. But that seems to be where they're focused now, as police and firefighters are on the scene trying to keep the peace there, keep things under control. We have some earlier video we can show you. This is when protesters first arrived at the Metro Courthouse earlier this evening, and then they started setting those fires. You can see the flames through the windows on the first floor of the courthouse. Again, these are city offices, the mayor's office is in there, administrative offices, council offices, all city government held in that building. And you can see the flames through those windows that were broken earlier in the evening. When they first arrived, they kind of spray painted the building, broke some of the windows, and then those fires started. And then it appeared that they had kind of moved away from the building, but that things picked up quickly, as we've seen throughout the evening. As you see there, more of the flames inside the building as the fire continued to grow. And then there were the fireworks and then the tear gas, and it just kind of continued to grow from there as police try to get things under control.
And we mentioned earlier, WeGo temporarily suspended service downtown as these protests continued. But again, this is not one big, large demonstration. These groups have splintered since the rally, peaceful rally earlier today, and now a live shot of what it looks like there at the historic Metro Courthouse. It is now secure, police on the scene, and hopefully the fire that was started has been put out. Eric, from Sky 5, it looks like a lot of the protesters have gone to the south side there along Union Street at kind of the face of 2nd Avenue. Do you know if they're organizing and moving somewhere else? Eric, go ahead. What do you see? Oh, he's just going to check his microphone for a second. But there is the group. That is the south side, the south steps of the historic Metro Courthouse, where Live on the Green is held. A lot of people are gathered there. That is Union Street and the corner of Union and 2nd. Eric, do you know, are these people leaving or moving somewhere else?
Yeah, Roy, sorry about that earlier, but it looks like we've got an influx of people coming in from the James Robertson side of the Metro Courthouse. Just as things started to get under control, it looks like folks now trying to tear down the lampposts here in the park as there was a big influx of people coming in from the Metro Courthouse side just as things started to calm down here, and now it looks like things ramping up again as folks are trying to tear down those light poles. We've heard several other crashes over in that area, and it looks like that one light pole closest to us might be coming down pretty soon. I was just talking to some protesters who had spent the day around town. We're at the Central Precinct. They said they got here when from the Central Precinct when the flames were already going on inside of the Metro Courthouse, and they said that surprised them because the Metro Courthouse at that point was surprisingly calm. There wasn't a lot going on there, and it looks like one of those lampposts is now down and broken, as you can see, being taken down there. But that protester told me she was surprised because it was so calm over at the Central Precinct, but she wasn't shocked when she saw the tear gas being deployed. And one protester telling me that they think this is needed, that they think this is a wake-up call for the area, as you can see another lamppost going down. So we're continuing to monitor. Police, as you can see, are not advancing on those crowds that are moving to the south, and they're holding steady at the top of the Metro Courthouse along with that SWAT car, which we have seen advance a little further into the park, but they seem to be staying put right now as more protesters arrive and gather here at the other end of this park, going around and taking down some of these lampposts. You can hear them chanting as well as they're marching back toward the courthouse, back towards James Robertson. So a lot of action, and just as things started to quiet down, it looked like a lot more people showing up, marching in from somewhere.
Okay, Eric, thank you. And we want to update you on when we were showing you the fires earlier that were set in the building. We've now confirmed from Vice Mayor Jim Schulman that those fires on the first floor and those windows that we saw, that is the finance director's office where those fires were set. The mayor's office is actually on the other side of the building. It looks like now we are seeing.
Yeah, now we're on, this is, I believe, south side, Union Street and 2nd Avenue. Chris Davis, is that correct? Where are you?
That's correct. That's correct, Rory. We've now moved over. If you're familiar to where Grumpy's Bail Bonds is, right there on Union and 2nd Avenue, right at that intersection, the crowd has started to pour out of the courthouse complex. Before they did that, they actually knocked down about 2 or 3 light poles that were actually, some of them still connected. You could see the light fall down onto the pavement. Now there's a large gathering that is just taking place in the middle of the street here on Union. Cars kind of burning out their rubber, and just kind of a celebratory rally. My guess is that they're celebrating that they're able to take those lights down. I know before, as we were trying to relocate because the situation just got a little tense on that side of the street, there were a lot of people that were breaking some of the glass parts of the, the public structure over there on the green before coming out into the middle of the street. And they're currently, I can't say exactly what the chant is, but you get the idea, their sentiments for the police. And they're, it looks like we've got some signs and some flags, and everybody with their cell phone out, they've just taken off, in the middle of the street.
Okay, Chris, thank you. Let's head out to News Channel 5's Eric Hilt. He is not far from where Chris Davis is. Eric, what are you seeing from where you're at?
We have a vantage point a little bit above. We're in between this group and the Metro Courthouse, so the area that they really just left going onto Union Street. So you can see how many people are now congregating in the middle of Union Street. Chris mentioned some cars burning out with their tires. That's, I believe, some of that smoke that you see out there. But certainly a lot of protests are congregating there. I also want to show you, you saw from a distance those lampposts being brought down. This is what that looks like. You can see the top shattered, the lamppost on the ground. You can see it was broken all the way down here at the end, where you can see the protesters were able to snap it here at its base and then have it fall here before they moved into the street. As you can see now, they're in the street. And again, it looks as if police are staying where they were. We saw that earlier, that they did not immediately move to the Metro Courthouse. They have not immediately moved to Union Avenue yet, and we're now being told that the police say there is a 10 p.m. curfew, and that is in just about an hour and 15 minutes. That is just in from us, and so it'll be interesting to see what this crowd does as we get closer to 10 o'clock, now learning that police are instituting a 10 p.m. curfew, so we'll send it back to you.
Yeah, and as we look at this scene, again, right at the corner of Union and 2nd, some cars have pulled up. They're not damaging that car. It looks like the person is kind of out of the sunroof of that SUV, that white SUV, and kind of protesting along with them. So it doesn't look like much damage. They have stopped some traffic, but it definitely looks like a more concentrated group of people. Although, again, you see some people splintering away once again.
That's kind of what we've seen throughout the evening. But yeah, overall numbers certainly increasing there.
Right,
now we see more activity. Yeah,
definitely on the move, this group. So Sky 5, maybe they're running from tear gas once again. But Sky 5 gave us a great view there from above.
And let's head back out to Sina Saleem. She's been moving around throughout the evening. Sina, where are you now, and what are you seeing?
We are in front of Central Precinct, so that's Korean Veterans Boulevard and 6th Avenue South, where protesters have returned. So the last 30 minutes, the protesters left. This street was completely cleared out and empty, but the police remained here. They're standing in front of their precinct, making sure everything is okay, trying to protect their building. The protesters, as I mentioned, weren't here. They have returned. Many of them from the Metro Courthouse, where, as we've been saying, was a lot more rowdy over there. Chaos broke out over there. Folks had set the Metro Courthouse on fire. Here is a lot more calm right now compared to what we're seeing at the courthouse. People are chanting and they're yelling at police officers, but they're not getting too close to them. They're kind of in their face, but they're still giving them a bit of a distance, and they are back with signs. Earlier today, we've been here since around 5 o'clock. This whole entire street had protesters, I want to say a couple hundred. So right now we're not seeing as many protesters as there were earlier in the day, but we're still having a good amount, about a dozen people out here. Metro Police did tweet out recently that there is a 10 p.m. curfew. So for those joining us, we want to let you know that that is new information that we received. This whole area, Korean Veterans Boulevard, was blocked off earlier. They've opened up the streets, but as you can see, the protesters have kind of taken over and they're blocking the whole half of the street right now, yelling at the officers. This has been going on all day. We've seen these protesters exchanging words with officers. Before they were throwing items earlier in the day. Now it hasn't gotten that far. But again, just a lot of yelling and a lot of chanting, people with signs. You can just feel the anger from here. We're across the street right now, but you can just see them getting visibly upset, yelling at them, wanting social change, wanting social justice. There is some vandalism on the building that we've noticed, people who have spray painted the sides of the buildings. That was from earlier before, but all of that activity has slowed down. And right now, all we're really seeing is people standing in front of police officers and yelling at them, chanting at them, but nothing has turned physical just yet. I'm going to toss things over back to you in the studio.
Okay, Sina, thank you. And we also want to mention, in addition to that 10 p.m. curfew that she mentioned, Mayor John Cooper has also tweeted he has signed Executive Order number 9 declaring a state of civil emergency for Metro. So he's obviously monitoring the situation as well. Let's head back out to Chris Davis, who is at the Metro Courthouse watching some of the violence unfold there. Have things calmed down at all, Chris, or does it appear it's ramping up again?
Well, Metro took pretty decisive action. They're able actually to shoot some tear gas canisters towards the base of the steps here on Union and 2nd so that they could get traffic back open, because you just saw there's long traffic backups all across the Woodland Street Bridge from this vantage point. So people have cleared the road since the last time that we met. We are also hearing over the loudspeakers from the SWAT officials, this is the Metro Police. You can no longer be on the courthouse property. They've been repeating that message for the last couple minutes. So you can kind of see over the top of the cars, people have, I think, kind of returned to that concrete apron that surrounds the green space. And now you're seeing a lot of people run out of the way. We heard some cracks. It sounds like they have, you can see the smoke rising from the street. They have started to dispense with more tear gas to be able to clear this property. To be clear, once again, they repeated multiple times for several minutes that we need everyone off the courthouse property, and they have now started dispensing more tear gas canisters to be able to make that happen. Once again, Union Avenue has reopened to traffic. For several minutes, there were people just gathered in the middle of the street. So we are starting to see some people disperse from the area, but we don't know if that means they'll go somewhere else. I seriously doubt most of the people here know about the 10 o'clock curfew. I'm sure we'll hear an announcement over that SWAT vehicle on that to be able to spread that message as we get closer to 10 o'clock. But we have certainly at least allowed traffic to reopen on Union, and it looks like people are still staying off the green portion of the courthouse lawn, but they are kind of on that concrete apron, and they are starting to administer gas canisters to be able to clear that area. And they continue to announce, we need you to leave the property. We'll see if people comply.
Okay, Chris, thank you for that update. Yeah, obviously, still a lot going on in that area. Yeah.
Hopefully people who are at home right now watching young people, old, whoever, who are thinking about maybe going out and joining any of these protests tonight, we have just a little more than an hour before now a curfew is in effect. And we should point out this is happening in cities all across the country tonight. Mayors in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Atlanta have also declared curfews. Obviously, Minneapolis is the real hot zone where George Floyd was killed. They have brought in National Guard in a number of these cities. CBS News reporting some violent clashes in Los Angeles this evening between protesters and police. I mentioned the other cities. There's Portland, Oregon, Cleveland, Miami, Houston, Dallas.
Yeah, Louisville, Dallas, several.
Philadelphia, New York, all around the country. As you know, we're dealing with a pandemic. We're dealing with a lot of unemployment, and now this terrible death of George Floyd. And I will say, Mayor Cooper and Police Chief Anderson and the Fraternal Order of Police earlier this week, Emily, coming out with very strong statements. Anyone who saw that video is obviously disturbed, and that officer is now charged with murder.
And Mayor Cooper attended the rally earlier today and encouraged Metro Council members to do the same. He said it was important to hear the voices and the opinions that were going to be expressed at that event. And that was earlier in the evening before things kind of escalated and started turning violent.
We didn't want to happen here in Nashville. We want Nashville to be the example to set, and so hopefully just a few instigators will not cause everyone else to get violent. We want everyone to remain peaceful and stay safe, including our reporters there. Eric Hilt, Chris Davis, Sina Saleem, all in the area downtown. Eric Hilt, what are you seeing now at the courthouse?
Yeah, we've moved a little closer to the Metro Courthouse, and you can see when we left this area, there was a line of cops using their bicycles as a barrier. Those police officers have left. They've been replaced with SWAT officers who are now standing, blocking the steps to the Metro Courthouse. And if we pan over to the right, you can see those officers on bicycles. They have moved into the park, unsure where they're going from there, but no longer creating that barrier in front of the Metro Courthouse, as now that is the SWAT officers who are creating that border as they continue to blare instructions out over that SWAT vehicle, trying to get protesters away from this park, away from the Metro Courthouse. It seems like they're back over towards Union Street right now after the latest few rounds of tear gas we saw deployed. But as you said, it'll be interesting to see what happens here in a little more than an hour, as that now we know 10 p.m. curfew goes into effect. There are still a lot of protesters here, as you can hear, as you may be able to hear. There are more sirens headed this way. So unsure where this goes from here, but it looks like there are some folks throwing firecrackers as well. But certainly a lot happening just in the last 10-15 minutes here outside the Metro Courthouse.
You can hear me, but now that the crowd has kind of moved away from the lawn there at the courthouse, can you tell what direction they've moved, or where have they moved relative to the courthouse, or has the group kind of broken up?
They've moved across the park from the courthouse. So it's again towards Union Street. We can hear some cars revving their engines that appear to be coming from Union Street. So it looks like those protesters have made their way back over in that direction, as they just like they did when the tear gas was first deployed and they moved on to Union Street.
Okay, Eric, thank you so much for that update. So people still in that area despite the tear gas.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure if we can go to Mike Rose, if he can hear us, or if we can tap into his microphone.
I got
Mike,
you guys.
Yeah, our chief photographer, Mike Rose, up in Sky 5. Any idea there? It looks like the group disperses, then it gets together. What are you seeing?
You know, that's been, I feel like the theme all night is you'll have these moments where they appear to be very disorganized and they kind of wander around, and then all of a sudden, you know, like a swarm of bees or something, they kind of like focus and unite on one thing and all run in a particular direction and kind of focus their angst or anger or whatever it is against that, and then this kind of standoff thing happens right now. And it earlier about social media, you know, people kind of operating on an, you know, some kind of social media where they're taking their cues, and everybody gets those pings at the same time, and then they all kind of take off and run to whatever the latest target is. And so, but at this point, I mean, the Metro PD did an excellent job coming in and dispersing the crowds with the tear gas and everything. And just, I think at this point, it's just a matter of just keeping everybody dispersed. You know, maybe the tactic is that the more people are spread out, the less likely they are to, you know, talk amongst themselves and kind of develop another, you know, the next target.
Quite a bit of it.
At this point, yeah, they've definitely spread everybody out pretty well.
Quite a bit of a traffic backup too, Mike, there along Union going over the Woodland Street Bridge. It looks like a lot of those cars are just having to sit and wait.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and anybody that's coming into downtown that doesn't know that this is going on is in for quite a surprise. You can still see the police force.
Yeah, they're on the James Robertson
here on the
bridge,
the other courthouse. I mean, it's just it's platoon of police cars. Lance, our pilot, and I, we saw them coming up from the I-24 corridor, just this column of blue lights racing to get to this spot, and it's just providing backup officers for this whole scene that's here at the courthouse.
Okay, Mike, thank you, and thank you for giving us such a great perspective from Sky 5 throughout the evening. That's really helped us kind of understand as people have moved throughout the city. We can see where they're out. Let's head back out to Eric Hilt, who is still by the Metro Courthouse monitoring the latest activity there. Eric, what are you seeing?
We've seen the protesters move once again closer to the Metro Courthouse, and you can see the SWAT officers have now moved out closer to the protesters. We've seen a considerable amount of movement from the SWAT officers in the last 5 minutes as they've moved further away from the Metro Courthouse. They were holding that line on the stairs of the Metro Courthouse. Now they've moved out a little bit closer to the protesters. As if we pan over to the right, you can see the protesters have also moved back closer to the Metro Courthouse as from where they were on Union Street. So it looks like these two groups are getting closer, and it looks like maybe now the SWAT officers are creating a barrier so no one can get past, it looks like. And we're seeing some movement on the SWAT vehicle as well. Let's listen to what they're saying. It sounds like it's that same message that they're not allowed on near the Metro Courthouse and that they need to leave. But there is still that crowd of protesters really just across this park, across from these SWAT officers, continues to grow. They are now chanting. It sounds like they're chanting "No justice, no peace" as these officers are holding their line over on this side. Looks like things are static for the moment. These SWAT officers have not deployed the tear gas like we have seen them do over the last half hour. It looks like they are just letting the protesters do their thing over on the other side of the park, but we'll continue to monitor this as this unfolds. Certainly some movement with the SWAT officers and a lot of movement with the protesters as well.
Okay, Eric, thank you. Of course, it is now 9 o'clock. We are 1 hour away from the 10 p.m. curfew that Metro Police have announced is in effect, and trying to get the word out to people out on the streets, although many of them may not be aware of that at this point.
That's right. And a couple of those protesters I think we saw just now facing off with the SWAT officers, one of them holding, it looked like, one of the lamp posts that they had knocked down. So there's been some damage, definitely some vandalism on social media. People are reacting to our posts right now, and some pretty unhappy Nashvillians who are at home watching this, kind of saying, "Cut it out, stop now." We had a peaceful protest earlier. There's a way to go about doing this, and there's a way not to do it, and the damage and destruction is just hurtful to so many people as they watch this.
Let's go out to News Channel 5's Matthew Torres. Matthew, where are you and what are you seeing?
Hey, Emily, good evening. We are just on the west side of the Metro Historic Courthouse, where we've seen still a large presence of law enforcement and Nashville firefighters as well. Let me step aside here to show you. We actually saw a couple of firefighters leaving the building right now, but here on this side, especially for folks just driving down this area of Nashville, it is certainly a sight to see. Something shocking, something very unusual at this moment. We're just here near the fire truck where we've seen kind of a gathering of police officers here, not just here outside of the Metro Courthouse, but also next to the new jail, which is just across James Robertson Parkway. And so just driving down James Robertson Parkway, while that road is not completely blocked, you will certainly see the officers blocking 3rd Avenue North, where we're standing right now, near Diedrich Street, and as well across the street near the new downtown jail. They have been watching this area, remaining calm, really keeping their restraints here right now. Officers with their face masks kind of gathered here. This has been a clump of where all of these officers have been really gathered. So where Eric Hilt is earlier, okay, you might have just heard those explosions, flashbangs. We're seeing a gentleman just coming around the other side of this building. Even though we're hearing this commotion right now, even those flashes of pops, you see these officers just standing on this side of the road. It seems like they're really just keeping an eye out and keeping the civility on this side of the building. I'm not sure exactly what's happening over there, where they just threw some type of explosion or flashbang to where we just heard that. Another one there right now, live on television. That's what, a third or fourth one during this time. Who knows what's happening there, whether there's the officers with the riot gear or the SWAT team, but just over on this side, it's really an interesting perspective, since we're hearing things all the way on the other side, but you're feeling that energy in the middle of that lawn just outside of the historic Metro Courthouse on this side of things. As far as any protesters or anyone who may have been a part of this, we're not seeing that over here. What we are seeing is just the abundance of law enforcement happening right now. We'll send it back over to you.
Okay, Matthew, thank you for that update. As again, we see people starting to move again, although activity still centered in that area around the Metro Courthouse. Still a lot of movement, and we're not quite sure where people may be headed next.
Chris Davis is down on the ground as well. Chris, what do you see?
Rory, we saw a pretty giant retreat as they continue to fire off canisters of tear gas. It's kind of been this back and forth for the last hour. There's been a big wave of kind of retreat out into Union Avenue to be able to get away from these flashbangs, these tear gas canisters. They've been warning about firing these for the last 5 to 10 minutes. And then after it clears for a while, they'll push back into the property. But they seem to be pretty serious about it this time. You can see actually some armed we can see some law enforcement officials advancing towards us, and then you can see some of those tear gas canisters continue to be deployed closer to be able to get everybody off that courthouse property that they've been warning about for the last 15 to 20 minutes. They've been coming over the loudspeaker saying, we need you off the property. You can no longer be on the property. They are now enforcing that through tear gas, and you've seen people now return back to the middle of Union, which, as we saw last time, then started a huge traffic mess, and people started, demonstrating in the middle of the street, and we're starting to see more people pour across the street now, crossing right here at the intersection of 2nd and Union Street. So it looks like they have gotten most everybody off of the courthouse property now. You see some people still continuing to trickle off of the steps, but they are now, it looks like maybe perhaps going down 2nd Avenue. Emily, you mentioned it before, where we don't know where they might go next. It looks like the crowd is starting to go down 2nd Avenue. We are seeing some people starting to, whoa! That looked like a huge firework that just went off in the middle of the green there. We don't know which direction that may have been shot from which side. That definitely took people got people's attention when that happened, and people are starting to pour down 2nd Avenue. It looks like they may be heading towards Broadway, as best we can tell. We can't really see around the corner here. You can definitely feel the tear gas start to waft across the street. They definitely fired several canisters to be able to clear the courthouse property, and you can see people right there. Oh, yep, you can see one that we can see some Roman candles that are going off there in the middle of the stairs there. We can see some people reacting here to the tear gas, getting a full dose of it right there. Photojournalist Brian Howlett giving you a close-up look of just kind of the, reaction to the tear gas. You may remember, if you've been watching with us tonight, our crew came pretty close to one, and it is no joke, Rory and Emily.
Okay, Chris, please stay safe out there.
What a shot. And Eric Hilt had a shot just a moment ago. He is kind of holed up in that outbuilding off of Public Square where there was some tear gas. I think that tear gas canister was very close to you, Eric.
Yeah, that's why we moved into this elevator area as the SWAT team moved out and pushed people away from the Metro Courthouse. Some of those tear gas canisters were coming right near us. As you can see, I want to tell you a little bit about how this feels. It's a burning in the eyes and in your nose and deep in your throat. It's hard to really keep from coughing. It's hard to keep from touching your eyes, but they tell you not to because it's really just a burning sensation as that tear gas canister was deployed near us and kind of wafted as we retreated into this building. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we saw before that as the SWAT officers started to advance their line toward the protesters. Last time I talked to you, I said they were kind of at a standstill. That didn't last very long as they moved up and started moving protesters off of this plaza, this park area that is outside of the Metro Courthouse. And if you look over to the left, if our photojournalist can point us over, you can see maybe the SWAT van over. That's where we were a little earlier, where they were breaking those lampposts, where protesters were tearing down those lampposts. You can see that's how far these SWAT officers have advanced their line here outside the Metro Courthouse. And we can see someone being taken into custody here as we are also being urged to leave the Metro Courthouse area. But we can see these officers taking a man into custody. We are unsure what preceded this, what went up this, but we can see a man being taken into custody here towards 3rd Avenue, where those police cars have been all night. So you can see there are 2 officers here bringing that man, it looks like, into one of the police cruisers, as now we're near where police have been staging. I believe this is near where Matthew was earlier. You can see a lot of police officers, many of them wearing gas masks because of that tear gas that I was just telling you about that was deployed to get people away. So you can see they are searching this gentleman who was taken into custody at the Metro, outside the Metro Courthouse, and then it looks like loading him up into this Metro police truck. So we can say now at least one person taken into custody here outside the Metro Courthouse as we're seeing him being loaded into this Metro police van. It looks like now, though, the courthouse grounds, the park is cleared, and as Chris said, it's unsure what will happen to this group of protesters that was here, where they will go, what will they do, but it looks like the Metro Police SWAT team is not letting those protesters back near as close as they were to the Metro Courthouse.
Okay, Eric, thank you so much for that update as we continue to follow the activity outside of the Metro Courthouse. Metro Police using more tear gas to clear out that area as we've watched people move away from the building and then kind of inch their way back in, that being used in hopes of clearing that area and securing it after people vandalized the building and then set it on fire earlier this evening. Let's head out to Sina Saleem. Sina, where are you at now and what are you seeing?
Emily, we are at Central Precinct, and I will say, compared to what Eric has been seeing at the courthouse, this is a completely different scene, a lot calmer. The craziest thing we've really seen is protesters yelling at the officers, getting in their face, chanting, but nothing has turned violent. They haven't thrown anything in the last hour. They were doing that earlier this afternoon, but all of that has calmed and settled down. Right now we have, I would say, maybe 24 people out here, protesters. They're holding their signs and they're talking to the officers. We can't really hear what they're saying from where we're standing, but you can see them exchanging dialogue back and forth right now. But again, nothing has turned violent in the last hour. The police officer, I don't know if you can hear him, but he's announcing to protesters that there is a curfew at 10 p.m. He's asking the protesters to leave and to disperse by 10 p.m. or else he did say that they would use chemical agents to get the streets cleared. Again, curfew at 10 p.m. Whether or not these protesters are going to listen, we'll have to wait and see. We have less than an hour until that curfew. But again, a different scene than we're seeing at the courthouse. We're here at the Central Precinct, and protesters have been here, I want to say, since around 5 o'clock. So they've been here for hours with their signs. They've been saying their messages over and over again, which is no justice, no peace, and justice for George Floyd. Right now, we have seen some vandalism take place. We saw people spray painting the buildings. They were spray painting the ground. They vandalized the police cars, but as I was saying, it isn't violent here. A different scene that we're seeing at the courthouse, it is pretty calm. Like I said, 24 people here just exchanging words with the officers, and the officers are just reminding them that they need to go home by 10 p.m. So for now, I'll throw it back to you guys in the studio.
Sina Saleem at the police precinct downtown. Sky 5 above all of it. There you see the top of the Music City Center. Looks like at this hour, hopefully, these crowds, Emily, have started to disperse Police moved in, and Mayor Cooper issued that state of civil emergency and issued that 10 o'clock curfew.
And then just in, Governor Bill Lee announcing at the request of Mayor Cooper, I'm authorizing the National Guard to mobilize in response to the protests that have now taken a violent turn in Nashville. So we are also factoring that in, as well as you mentioned, in addition to the curfew, in an attempt to try to get everything under control as we monitor things here across Nashville with our crews all across the city who have been out there for hours monitoring the situation.